Get ready, Staten Island.
The Ferry Hawks host the Hagerstown Flying Boxcars. Tonight at 7 p.m., it's soccer night, and kids glow around the bases postgame. Saturday at 6:30, it's Broadway night with postgame fireworks and Broadway rave. Sunday at 1:30, it's Military Appreciation Day, and the kids run around the bases.
A great day out for the entire family. Kids run the bases after every Sunday home game. Want the best seats all season? Get more Ferry Hawks for only $63. Visit ferryhawks.com now to lock in your seats.
Listen, all you New Yorkers. Taxi.
Okay, man, we're looking around.
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
Reverend, I was privileged some years ago to have lunch with the former mayor, Ed Koch. And when he concluded the stream, we'd go out, go to a restaurant, and it was amazing to me how he was received. Everybody knew him. Everybody recognized him. Everybody was, just embracing him. And then I find there are some people who serve in office, and when they leave, nobody knows. Yes, they didn't know who they were when they were in office. They certainly don't know who they are when they're out of office. But Congressman Peter King has a distinction in Koch-like, where people know him wherever he goes, a great friend to so many on both sides of the aisle. And unfortunately, that model has become obsolete. But with that, let's go to Congressman who served in Congress with distinction 1993, 2021, 2nd Congressional District of New York. We call him America's Congressman, Peter King. Good morning.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you, Reverend. And let me just say, to begin the show, like you did, talking about Ed Koch, what a great guy he was to know. He could be cantankerous, he could be ornery, but he was such a great New Yorker, a great American, and really a heart of gold. I mean, beyond that, the exterior he gave of being the tough guy with the wisecracks and talking out of the side of his mouth, he was really a very, very decent guy. And again, I think he and Giuliani were the two guys who saved New York. When Ed Koch came in, he did as much to boost the spirits of New York as anything else, because New York was really sort of down and out, in the late 70s, and you had blackouts, you had crime, you just had a general feeling that the city was going down, and then Koch brought it back. So I was proud to call him a friend, even though he was a Democrat and I was a Republican. And at least one and two of the tough campaigns I had, Ed Koch was there doing TV commercials for me, and he did it in his inimitable style. I remember the person who was doing the TV ad said they never saw a guy come in, do it in one take, and leave. That was Ed Koch. He just did it.
Yeah.
Well, wait. Let's talk about that style for a minute, because what I appreciated about him most, because I dealt with him as liaison in the faith office that he kind of dismantled, but you never left him wondering where he stood. You knew. There was no doubt about it. You knew exactly where he stood on any issue. What was that style to you guys?
Well, to me, it really meant a lot. And yet you could disagree with him. And I didn't, disagree with him on that many issues. But whether you did or not, he loved having debate and discussion. I remember several times he invited me to dinner parties at his home. And you thought you were back in school. It was like a debate around the table. Each person had you had to sing for your supper. I mean, he said, you're not going to get a free meal. I want to hear. And it was back and forth. You could have some arch conservative, you could have a liberal, you could have a progressive, you could have everybody in the room, Jews, blacks, it doesn't matter who it was. He wanted discussion to get going. And as soon as you sort of agreed on a compromise, Koch would start it all over again. Yeah. But it was done in a humor and such an intelligent way. So different from what you see today, where everyone is the enemy.
So what I admire so much about Koch was his pride in being a Jew, and he wouldn't compromise that core value. I remember Congressman, Rev, I'm sure you recall, when he met President Jimmy Carter, he handed him an envelope. Mm-hmm. And in the envelope was a statement of strong disagreement with Carter's particular policy, but he was not afraid to back down. And look where we are today. Now we have candidates who make Israel out to be the enemy. You can be pro-Hamas and be a nominee in the party. You can have a Nazi swastika tattooed, and then you try to cover up, and win a primary. What happened, Congressman? What happened to the Joe Liebermans and the Koches and the Bloomberg and so many others that we looked up to as leaders who were effective? And now we have those who simply tear us apart with their hatred.
Yeah, and what I really appreciated about, I appreciate a lot of things about them. Like you mentioned, Joe Lieberman, Ed Koch, Mike Bloomberg, especially Lieberman and Koch, is yes, they were proud to be Jews. They were, first and foremost, they would be fighting for the rights of Jewish people, fighting for Israel, but they also could work with all other groups. They were somehow able to show the universality of our concerns, that a threat to the Jews is a threat to the Irish, it's a threat to the Italians, it's a threat to blacks. I mean, Koch was down there with the Freedom Riders in Mississippi in the early 1960s. So I think what they did was show people that there's a universality, that when you're fighting for human rights for Jews or freedom for Jews against anti-Semitism, that affects everybody. And I think too often today you have people who, that if you support Israel, that means that you're anti-Arab or you're anti-Muslim. And it's just, that I think is what's missing. The fact is that you can find common ground among different people and that certain values and principles are universal and they're not limited to one group. And if you don't defend any group that's attacked on those principles, then you're really offending everybody.
Is that a reflection of the tribalism that we're experiencing in our nation? Because that's a tendency to organize society around one group and loyalty to that group, a dominant group, its ideologies, its beliefs, its way of thinking. Are we that afraid of other ideas, other people? Have we come to that place in American society?
I think to some extent we have, yeah. And again, talking about Koch, I mean, okay, there he was, the proudest Jew you could ever find. And yet the St. Patrick's Day parade, he was wearing that Irish sweater and waving an Irish cane and, shillelagh. I mean, he was proud. Then you see him at every ethnic parade. And it wasn't just pandering. It was a genuine, somehow being able to appreciate the goodness and the beauty of every group. I mean, not to bring up Mario Cuomo, but his whole idea of New York and America being the mosaic, the stained glass window. Every group maintains its own beauty, its own identity, yet it adds to the beauty of the whole picture. And that really is what I think is missing today. People somehow think that if it's not done their way, everything else is going to be bad. No, what your ethnic group, your religion, your race does, do that, and that adds to the beauty of everyone. And that should work its way throughout the city, throughout the state, throughout the country. I think we're getting away from that. Yes, unfortunately.
Well said. And that's what makes America great. When we have that appreciation for what each culture brings. That's the beauty of American society. That's what I understood when I came to this country. And unfortunately, that's not the way it is today.
Well, I see something.
Rabbi, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I see something going on to me as perverse, is that you have people who identify as Jews. And Congressman and I have spoken about this. If someone begins a sentence with "as a Jew," watch out, because you're going to get a kind of ugly criticism of the Jewish people, and yet they claim to be proud Jews. You have people running for office now who are Jewish, and yet they will align themselves with those who support terrorists. There's a woman in New York, Washington Heights area, who says Hamas did the right thing, and she's got support from members of her party. And one of the people supporting her is a Jew. So I don't understand how we got from where Koch was to where we are today. It is just shocking. Congressman?
Yeah, it really is unfortunate. And it's not an exact comparison, but we used to have among the Irish community, we call them lace curtain Irish. These are people, as soon as they made a few dollars or for whatever reason it was in their benefit, they try to pretend they were more pro-British than they were Irish. They wanted to somehow move away from their ethnic background. They'd say, I'm Irish, but I'm not one of those. And somehow they wanted to climb above it. I think that, like in the intellectual world today, and in parts of the political world, it's considered to be really almost something evil, something wrong if you're totally Jewish, if you're totally pro-Israel, if you're And I don't mean totally, you can disagree with Israel, but say you're not as supportive of Israel as any Jew, anybody should be, quite frankly. And so they sort of apologize. They're being apologetic, and it sort of makes them more acceptable in certain levels of society, certainly in high society and intellectual society. And also it helps them politically among a certain base of voters. So, no, to me, you should never sell out your tradition. If you have an honest disagreement, say it. But don't be saying as a Jew or as an Irishman, as a black. To me, that just undercuts your whole argument and looks like you're pandering and you're sacrificing your own pride and your own identity.
We're going to take a break.
Yeah, we'll be back with more of the Rev and the Rabbi right here on Red Apple Radio Networks.
Reverend A.R. Bernard, Rabbi Joseph Potasnik, where faith matters. The Rev and the Rabbi. Where faith matters. The Rev and the Rabbi.
Welcome back. I'm Rabbi Joseph Potasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard. Let me say, gentlemen, we were talking during the break about the collapse of shared narratives. Previous generations, we had common institutions that created a shared civic identity, our public schools, local newspapers, civic organizations, even labor unions, as well as religious institutions. But we had a shared cultural experience. But now that's changing. People are consuming different media. They're trusting in different authorities, and actually different realities is what we're experiencing. So there is not that shared reality.
And the voters, many in the electorate, they don't want the elected officials to compromise. They don't want them to work with the other side. They want them to combat. They want them to hold fast and to try to destroy the other side. And of course, they use social media, as a platform to facilitate that. But Congressman, you were a master of bipartisanship, and today you would be taken to task for this, some of the things you did.
Yeah, I always felt that I stood fast in my principles. I had very strong beliefs. But the idea is to get something done, you're almost never going to get 100%, what you want. And you make the best arrangement you can. And that's what the voters wanted. I use the example of Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill. He was then the most conservative, principled president we ever had. Tip O'Neill was a classic liberal Democrat in the New Deal sense of the word. So both of them, strong people within their parties, and yet they managed to work together, and that was encouraged. People admired the two of them when they could work at something like it. And it gets the mid-'80s, they actually worked out a compromise on Social Security, which has lasted like 30 or 40 years. That couldn't be done today. As a Republican, I would say if you even say a good word about a Democrat, appear with them at an event, God forbid, compromise with them on legislation, you're a rhino, Republican name only. And then the base of your party comes out to vote against you in the next primary. And the same, obviously, it's the same on the Democratic side. When you have any number of moderate-type Democrats who get taken out or are scared of the Democratic Socialists in their own party. So they're the ones then who get elected, and you get ultimate gridlock in Congress. That's why when people say they're against gridlock, can you guys get something done? But the people who try to get something done get voted out of office. So we have to get back to, it's the O'Neill, Reagan, even going back earlier than that, Lyndon Johnson, Everett Dirksen. I mean, people found a way to get it done. The Marshall Plan went through back in the 1940s. Harry Truman worked with Republicans to come up with a common defense policy against Soviet expansion. That was, again, that'd be unheard of today. I mean, no matter which side, when the Democrats are in office, it's great to support Ukraine. And then Trump comes in, he's not too crazy about Ukraine. People go back and forth, and it depends almost on who's in office, on what that party is going to support on foreign policy, on domestic policy. It's we have to get back to some sort. Listen, there's no need to be weak. There's no need to give in on principle. Fight as hard as you can. And then when you get the result that you and your constituents and your beliefs are compatible with, take it. You're never going to get 100%. Yeah. What did Koch say? If you agree with me, more than 90% goes, here's a psychiatrist.
Yeah, but that's a problem because increasingly people are deriving meaning and purpose from identity with a political party.
Yeah.
I'm a progressive, I'm a conservative, but that becomes their whole source of being, and that's a problem because when beliefs become identities, gentlemen, you know this, that when you change your mind, you feel like you're betraying your true self. But the political party is not your true self.
Yeah. Well, look, remember what happened in Queens when Amazon wanted to come in?
Oh, boy, yeah.
Right? And there were, 25,000 high-paying jobs. And now people who opposed Amazon with those high-paying jobs are complaining about affordability.
Yeah.
I mean, they're saying, rents are too high, people can't afford. Well, you fought the jobs. And yet the electorate, many of them buy into it. That's what, there's no critical thinking. If you're a member of a party, if you're DSA, vote DSA, Democrat, whatever it is, vote party over principle, vote party over position. It's so wrong, and it's illogical, and it hurts the people, but yet they still support the candidate.
We first saw that in the Republican Party, most dramatically so. I guess it was in 2014. Eric Cantor was the Republican majority leader, absolute conservative, more conservative than many other Republican members of Congress. Down the line, conservative. He's in the primary against an unknown, and he ended up losing by 12 points. Why? Because they found some statement he had made 3 years before on an obscure amendment, which seemed to suggest he was soft on immigration. Now, his voting record wasn't. There's one amendment they were talking about. They put in tons of money on that one issue, and Eric Cantor, his whole career was gone. He was out of office. And that's sending a message to other Republicans. If they didn't watch their base, keep the base of the party happy, they'd be out. And the general rule is in the primary, if 15 to 20% of the people come out, that's a lot. The other general rule is 10% of each party is crazy. The other ones are going to come out in the primary. So that 10% ends up determining the future of the party.
Could Ronald Reagan be elected today in the Republican Party?
No.
No.
Right? You talk about positions.
Exactly.
He would be seen as a Democrat or a rhino or whatever.
Exactly.
How about John Kennedy?
Right. It's just, it is amazing to me. And what is it? And people use social media as the primary source for information.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Somebody says something stupid and there's no fact checking, there's no accountability. You get away with it.
Well, Reverend Bernard and I, we just looked to Rabbi Potasnik. He's our source of knowledge.
I admire your judgment. Yeah.
You give us our sense of reality. That's just the way. But and people are more emotional. We've always been emotional creatures, but today, I mean, everything is looking to control our emotions. Fear spreads faster than facts. Outrage, which is a part of the media, that spreads faster than complexity and nuance. And because you mentioned critical thinking, and certainty spreads faster than inquiry. We don't look into things the way we used to. And we ask questions like, does this make me angry? Does this confirm what I already believe? You guys know confirmation bias. And does my group agree with it? And that becomes the basis of our choices and our positions. We're not stopping to say, is this reasonable? Does this make sense? We don't question, analyze, reflect. We don't do that. And that's a problem because we have access to so much information. And yet we wisdom poor.
We're going to keep the Congressman. Can you stay for another segment, Congressman? Because, we love having you on the air with us.
Okay, as long as I get paid overtime, yeah.
All right. We'll match with whatever Sid you get on Sid, you get on this program.
Okay.
I got to tell you somebody called me, a clergy person, and said, "Why don't we have an interfaith watch party for the Knick game? Interfaith watch party." And I said, wow, that's a great idea. What happens if a fight breaks out? Yeah. And I was, the faith community, somebody goes
on the news.
Right. I mean, it's just, I learned that word years ago. I was taking a sociology course, anomie. There are no rules anymore.
Yeah.
We got to take a break.
Yeah. Stay tuned for more of the Rev the Rabbi this Sunday morning right here on Red Apple Radio Network.
Reverend A.R. Bernard, Rabbi Joseph Potasnik, the Rev and the Rabbi.
Welcome back. I'm Rabbi Joseph Potasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
We're talking about diversity of thinking, critical thinking, and Congressman, you're talking about social media. When we were in law school, you went to Notre Dame because you couldn't get into Brooklyn, and I went to Brooklyn.
Why? Finish that statement.
I'll just let that go. That's okay.
You'd read the majority opinion of a course, Supreme Court decision.
Right.
You'd read the minority opinion, and you'd say, you know what? They both make sense.
Yeah.
Right? Today, nobody reads the other opinion. It's the opinion that is compatible with your point of view that matters. Who cares what somebody else has to say about another issue or the same issue through a different lens? We don't think that way, and it's very unfortunate.
No, I agree with that totally. And on a more, let's say, working man's view, unlike you scholars in law school, to me, what we miss is days when New York had 3, 4, 5 newspapers. When you're reading a newspaper, the fact is you read one paper and the other, but as you're going through the paper, you're seeing conflicting views, you're seeing diverse views. And on social media, you can have something that's factually accurate, but the facts are taken out of context. And, going back years ago, I remember the founder of the John Birch Society, Robert Welsh, he wrote a 400-page book. Most of the facts in that book were accurate, and they were showing that Dwight Eisenhower was a communist. But they were totally out of context. but the facts were accurate. This happened on this day, this happened on that day, this happened, and then you add 2 and 2 and you get 5. But the fact is, on social media, a lot of these facts are accurate, but they're so out of context. They have no sense of historical perspective. There's no showing of the other side. And, Rabbi, I really hadn't thought of it in that term. That was the first thing I noticed in law school. Now, you read the majority opinion. Right. Oh, my God, of course, how could any moron disagree with this?
Yeah.
You read the minority opinion, and it was as strong, if not stronger, than the majority. And people we see some of that today, and I have a little bit of a bias here. You mentioned Notre Dame Law School. Amy Coney Barrett is from Notre Dame Law School. She was actually in the school at the same time as my daughter was. And my daughter will be the first to say Amy Coney Barrett was twice as smart as she was. She's absolutely brilliant. But she worked for, she was a clerk for Antonin Scalia. She's on the bench as a conservative jurist, and applying those principles, she has several times voted against the Trump administration.
Right.
The stuff you read on social media,
and she was bashed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And yet she's probably the most true conservative on that court, and she's an independent thinker, and she's conservative. And that would have been applauded in the past. They would say, oh, look at this. But today you're looked upon as a traitor. Somehow they've gotten to her. It's disgraceful.
So this feeds our initial conversation when we began the program. Why should people go into the arena, into the political arena? If this is what going to be subjected to, who needs it? They can do volunteer work, for some cause, but they don't have to be humiliated. They don't have to be denigrated by those who disagree. And look at what we're getting. Look at where we were in terms of candidates, and look at where we are in terms of candidates. We're not getting the best.
But doesn't that mean we need people who are going to go as light in the darkness? Don't we need points of light when things are like this? I would think it's going to take a lot of courage. It's going to take some stamina. You really have to be clear in terms of what you believe and understand. But aren't these times that we need individuals in the fight, Congressman?
Yeah, we do. I always thought there was nothing better than being in the arena. The old Teddy Roosevelt slogan, the man in the arena, now the man and the woman in the arena. But I did, and I'm glad I did it. But doing it, and I hope I would do it again if I were younger. But I think it's important that your family be lined up with you, because in the past it was one thing when they took shots at you. Now anyone at all in your family or even in your circle of friends becomes a target. And that's something that they have to be on board for that early on, knowing that if they're going to take the time to read social media, if they're going to take the time even just to watch television or listen to radio, you're going to have people saying the most horrible, vile things about you. And it's one thing if they're saying about me when they're going after your family. That's a whole different story. So that's something you really have to get a whole family to sign on for. And that's what's going to make it tougher, I think.
Well, look.
Is there a tendency for people to attack when they can't defend their own position? That they have to resort to something else?
I agree completely.
Yeah, well, we learned in law school you got to yell, right? The more the louder you yell, the more you're weak on the facts. Yeah,
exactly.
But Congressman, look at what's going on with the great Knicks victory. You know, the city is enjoying the moment, and yet you see some of these watch parties. You see the behavior. A cop is attacked. A police car is destroyed. Fans wearing San Antonio shirts are attacked as well. I mean, you can't even root for your team in a safe climate if you're surrounded by those on a different team.
Yeah, I think so. Several factors.
Go ahead, Congressman. Yeah, because I'm going to respond differently to that one.
There's several factors, and one is everyone wants to be the center of attention. If a guy is scoring a winning basket for the Knicks, there's no reason you should be outside climbing up a telephone pole and throwing bottles at cops. I mean, one has nothing to do with the other. These people who want to get themselves out there, they want to become the center of attention. And also, to me, the breakdown in social mores, it all comes together, and it's really an extension of to me, the whole social media mentality is out there. It's wrong, and I think the watch parties, what goes on in some of them is absolutely indefensible, and it detracts. Listen, when the Mets won the World Series in 1969, when they beat the Red Sox, which was so good, in 1986, I mean, the Jets won the Super Bowl, the Yankees win. I mean, you didn't see that type of thing.
You know, again, I told the Reverend Bernard, we Bostonians, we're okay with you guys winning once every 52 years, once every 30 years. Yeah, that's good.
Okay,
we can accept that.
Here's my pushback. Look, for the most part, yes, there were a few individuals. Stephen A. Smith had texted me because, he and the president got into it. And then Stephen A. was talking about, rightfully, the egg that was thrown at Wemby. Right? From a crowd, they're trying to identify who did it. It hit him in the head. And he was making a point, very important, that this does not reflect all of New York City. There's always going to be a handful of individuals, all right, who the media will then blow out of proportion and paint with a broad stroke brush the whole city and all of New Yorkers. Well, that is not true. There's a handful of individuals, unfortunately, who just really make it difficult for everyone to appreciate.
Rev, when the handful becomes the story, it seems to me that the rest of the hand, right? If you have a few fingers, the rest of the hand or the rest of should stand up and condemn it.
We should condemn it, absolutely.
Right? But you don't see
the
picture. That's what bothers me is that you don't have people standing up and saying, "Get down from there. You are shaming us." By the way, Congressman, you should know that the Rev is the only person Stephen A. Smith doesn't yell at when he talks to him.
Well, we set boundaries early in the relationship.
Actually, you mentioned Stephen A. Smith. I don't follow ESPN that closely, but there's a guy who can be loud and everything, but yet there's a certain civility about him at the same time. So to me, it's trying to be loud and outspoken, to be controversial, but I don't spot a hatred there. I don't think he hates you if you.
No.
And that to me is there's a difference between the real anger that people are showing and the I don't know. It's
and the players are friends.
But I mean,
and the players have a relationship with one another, and the fans are going at each other.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely, they do. And see, that's the way it should be. Look, part of this stuff, is entertainment. All right, when these guys get on there and they talk and say the things that they do, but you're right. We can do that without purposely, intentionally creating outrage by the things that we say. if we're having a serious discussion, we understand, well, this is my perspective on it, and you bring me in from my perspective on it. Let's debate it. Let's
Right.
talk about it. Tell me if I'm wrong. All right. So I got to defend my guy, Stephen, for that. Stephen A.
But look, you have a president who calls reporters stupid, right? They were having a discussion about the 2020 election, the name calling that goes on. You know, how do you justify that? You don't like the question? You don't like, something being asked of you in an interview? Well, don't denigrate the person. Discuss it. Debate it. Argue it on facts.
We've shifted from some. Do you guys remember the conversation with Charles Barkley when Barkley was saying, "No, I'm not a role model for anybody," and they attacked him? Do you remember that?
Sure.
But you are, when you're a high-profile figure, especially in the presidency. Come on, you must carry yourself as an example to the rest of our society. I agree with some of the things that Trump has done. I disagree with some of the things and how he's done it. All right. But the office itself should demand a certain dignity. Am I wrong, Congressman?
No, you're right. In fact, I find fault with him on that. I also found fault early on with the media. I thought they went above and beyond what they had to do in attacking him. But, they did that with Reagan, too. And somehow Reagan was able to handle it with a smile or a put down in a way that didn't offend anybody or everybody. And that, to me, is part of the style. I thought of, for instance, a person who really mastered that the other day was Jessica Tisch, when she said she would march in the Israeli Day Parade.
Oh, yeah.
And
Proudly.
then just said one word, proudly. And that turned the whole thing to me. Rather than going to a rant or anything, just one word said intelligently and with class. And that, to me, is what we should try to get. I have no problem with being in a tough fight with someone and go back. There's a line you don't cross. And at the end, to me, it's like two boxes. They go 15 rounds. Now it's 12 rounds. And they're banging each other away. And at the end, they... again, they shake hands, they go out, and, they come back to fight again with Rocky Graziano, Tony Zale. I mean, all these great, and Dodgers and Yankees. I mean, they used to kill each other in the 1950s. Unfortunately, the Yankees won most of the time. But yet, you see those guys in the
Unfortunately, did he?
I agree with you on that, there, Congressman. Yeah. Look, the problem is, Congressman, you've negotiated 50% of the deal. You've convinced us. Now convince the other side. We agree. This is the dumbing down of society, as Patrick Moynihan would describe.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And I don't know how we get it back up, but we need better candidates, and we need an electorate that's more discriminating.
Can I use one example? Al D'Amato was a fierce, ferocious partisan. Dana Moynihan was a very sophisticated liberal Democrat. They worked together great in the Senate. From the day D'Amato got elected, Moynihan, they had a breakfast together, and for the next, I guess it was 18 years, whatever it was, they worked together as closely as two guys could work together, and it was to the benefit of New York.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congressman Peter King.
Yes, Congressman, always a pleasure to have you on the program. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Speak to you soon.
And we'll be back with more of the Rev and the Rabbi right here on Red Apple Radio Networks.
Reverend A.R. Bernard, Rabbi Joseph Potasnik, the Rev and the Rabbi.